spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man.
I want to start off by saying Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. Spider-Man was a big deal to me as a kid, and growing up, I have always made it a point to see every Spider-Man movie the day it's come out in the theater when it was released. I read a lot of comics growing up and watched all the cartoon series, and pretty much anything that Spider-Man's had his name attached to it I like. Even though some of the last motion pictures of Spider-Man weren't the greatest. Bullshit! Needless to say, when Spider-Man by Insomniac Games was mentioned to be released, I was pretty hyped. And well, so was the release of this game. You couldn't turn a corner without advertising this game, someone talking about it, someone bringing it up in a game conversation that had nothing to do with this game. Man, not too many people were not hyped for this game. That is, unless you didn't have a PS4. It's okay, Xbox. You got Game Pass and Crackdown in 2020, maybe. Anyway, Spider-Man by Insomniac Games on the PS4. This being exclusive to boot, I feel it had a lot more mystic aura around it, as Sony, when it does its exclusives as of lately, doesn't fuck around. They have been fucking making grand slams as of lately, and with Insomniac Games behind this, the team that did the Resistance games, which were okay, the third was amazing to me, Sunset Overdrive, oh yeah, Xbox, there you go, you got that one, the Ratchet & Clank series, and Spyro, among some others, but nonetheless a studio known for making games with crazy different kinds of weapons and gadgets, and just around great games. Spider-Man was just about on everyone's radar, and I, among many others, couldn't wait to play it. So after spending at least 14 hours plus with this game, let's talk about it. The setup. I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything here, so let's swing into this story. This world is a Spider-Man world where Spider-Man is already established, and he's a much older Spider-Man, unlike the Spider-Man that we've been getting from the Marvel movies lately. Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, is now in his 20s working and helping out Aunt May at her job, with the other job he's doing with Dr. Octavius developing mechanical prosthetics. Mary Jane, Spidey's longtime love interest, they have already tried to be together, didn't work, and the two have split. The usual cast of characters that make up Spider-Man's world are here as well, like Mr. Jameson, who's now retired from the Daily Bugle. He has started his own radio show where he comes up with crazy ass theories of Spider-Man and how he's the villain in all cases, where he clearly is the hero. I think the whole thing is a mockery of like Alex Jones, where it can be quite hilarious when a caller comes in and praising Spider-Man and how Jameson hangs up on him and threatens to fire whoever's letting these people get on his phone line.
Group of terrorists assassinate American citizens in a bomb attack. How is it possible that instead of being wiped out of existence, these masked criminals are still at large and still striking at innocent people like Oscorp CFO Charles Standish in their own homes? How? You're on with J. Jonah Jameson.
Osborn of Osborn Industries, who is the mayor and he's now running again. Harry Osborn, his son, who we don't really get to meet, but he has a lot of exposition and a couple of sections in the game with his voice in it as he's trying to help out the environment. On the other spectrum, you have a wonderful cast of Spider-Man villains, some well-known and not so well-known. Honestly, the thing is, I can't tell you who most of the villains are because they're kind of a surprise, and if I spill the beans for you, it's gonna be ruining for you. You won't get to see most of these villains till later on in the game. But as the Spider-Man story goes, well, holy shit, this is a good one. Much better than anything we've seen on the big screen. Don't get me twisted though, I really do like the Romney Spider-Man films. Yes, even Spider-Man 3, kind of. But well, a hell of a lot better than those Amazing Spider-Man movies or Homecoming or whatever the hell that was supposed to be. This world feels so, well, it feels like you're in a Spider-Man story, a real Spider-Man story. The world feels alive. The cast of characters from friend to foe, they feel real, they feel genuine. And the characters who weren't so fundamental to the story, as far as some of the villains who were just the one-dimensional villains you would expect from a Spider-Man story, who were just bad guys who hate Spider-Man because they're bad guys and they hate Spider-Man. Don't ask me why this works, but it just does. As far as the characters they give depth to, it's great. Amazing time spent with all of them just so you care enough about their plight. There was a right amount of time spent with them where I got to connect and I feel their side of the events that portray over in this story. I would love to spoil the story rotten, but I just can't. This game has to be experienced in all of its glory. It has a genuinely great plot twist and things that I never saw coming, even being a huge Spider-Man fan. It has a wide cast of supporting characters that are amazing. It makes this world come to life. It makes one of the best Spider-Man stories I have ever experienced. I will admit the first half of this game is a more happy-lucky-go Spider-Man, where Spider-Man is just doing Spider-Man. No real threats, but you get the inside scoop of a threat that's bubbling from the inside. There is a great build-up for when the other half of the story actually starts to happen, where the story becomes a fight for Spider-Man himself, his friends, and his home New York. The story at first didn't grasp me. I think I was just prepared for another run-of-the-mill Spider-Man story, as we're kind of used to getting over the past couple of years. But I was wrong. This story is something I hope Marvel Studios, as far as the big screen goes, could definitely learn from. An amazing story that kept me, a huge Spider-Man fan, drooling at what was going to happen next. I just couldn't wait. And even to the non-Spider-Man fans, there's still an amazing story here with a great plot twist, characters, villains, a great climax, and a resolution that may make you have to wipe a tear away. Spider-Man's story alone isn't enough to pick up this game, but the amazingness of this game doesn't stop there. As I took my first swing into New York as Spider-Man, I felt, honestly, like, okay, haven't we played this game like a million times across a bunch of different platforms? Okay, swinging through the city as Spider-Man is something I felt I'd done before, and I was really less than impressed. I went through my first few missions as Spider-Man, and the combat was, well, again, something I felt like, hey, haven't we done this before? Lots of the same mechanics in prior Spider-Man games as far as swinging through the city and the fighting mechanics. I honestly felt like, well, this is not going to be a great experience because, well, shit, all of these mechanics just seem so familiar to me, either from prior Spider-Man games or another superhero game. Combat wasn't as fun either in the beginning, as I was just getting my ass handed to me quite a bit, and for some reason, I felt I could never get my timing down, and I was just dying from, well, what felt like dumb or cheap shit. QuickTime events were cool as hell when they happened, but it finally dawned onto me about 2 or 3 hours in. I was having more fun with the combat and the web swinging. Everything was starting to come more naturally. As I felt this game was just going to be a button masher, the more I began to unlock Spider-Man's skill tree and unlock different suits and gadgets, the game finally opens up to you. When you start with Spider-Man, he's a pretty stiff potato and pretty dull to fight with, but unlocking different movesets, different suit abilities, and gadgets from your webs turns you into one hell of a powerhouse with a versatile armory of moves and powers. It was hard to see at first, but playing around with all the movesets that you find, the one that suits the situation best is a blast. From when taking out a few guys was frustrated with limited attacks to having almost limitless combos you can inflict on a huge group of bad guys is damn fun. The combos and how you can make them up can be just as simple as button mashing to making up extreme Spider-Man-esque crazy takedowns and impressive finishers. Your main mission marker parks up and you have the freedom to do as you please, but there are a lot of things to do outside of the main quest. Some of these side objectives are more funner than others, but they make your travel from one place to the next a lot more enjoyable. As some objectives you can do in less than a minute to complete, but all of this helps you level up and power up your skill sets and helps you put up a better fight. So when doing this became almost essential, it almost became an obsession to make Spider-Man open up to the next moveset, as everything that I was opening was so damn fun. It was like opening a new toy on Christmas and I couldn't wait to see what I got next. So doing these side missions, even though it made the game padded out a little bit, they were worth it. Because every time I felt like I completed it, I got something rewarding from it. Some of the side missions are pretty hokey and ridiculous, but some of them were actually pretty interesting. By completing them, you actually dive deeper into Spider-Man's world, and you actually get to meet some of the villains who aren't in the main story, and you wouldn't unless you would have done these missions. I would say most of them are fun, or, well, okay to do, but like the one like the Harry Osborn trailer things where you have to do things for the environment, to me were kind of a bore. Aside from those, there are random events that pop up during the city, like crying for Spider-Man to stop, and those help you level up as well. I have to say, I always felt like I needed to stop the crime because, well, this game does a damn good job of making you feel like Spider-Man. And as Spider-Man, I can't let my fellow New Yorkers be in peril. As far as the main story missions, you get a mix of beat 'em up sections, stealth sections, which are all great and fun. They were so great in fact that when they were taken away from me, I wanted them back. As this game has many sections where you will play as Mary Jane and Miles, Peter's new friend, where I felt like they really drove the game to a halt. These games were very essential to the story, and I guess they were a good breather between being and Spider-Man, but honestly, I couldn't wait to blast past these parts and get back to being Spider-Man. Sneaking around and solving puzzles and riddles was not what I was expecting when playing a Spider-Man game. But like I said, they work in the context of the story. Just wasn't what I was expecting. So all this mixed in, along with some superb boss fights in the city later on in the game, I must say, this game had me hooked. The last several nights, I was up to like 4 AM, and I was still playing this game and I couldn't put it down. I have little left to do to get to 100%, even though I've almost completed the game, but I want to go back to it. Even if everything is complete in the game, I could find fun just swinging through the city, as it's amazing and fun. Spider-Man's a game that hasn't done this to me in a while, where after I beat it, I want more, and I can't wait for what's next. It is pretty hard for me to complete a single story game nowadays and go back to do side quests or do anything inside the game outside of the main story. But this game, oh man, this game, it's great, fun, and maybe it was just me, but at first it seemed too familiar and just another superhero Batman Arkham game-ish. But after a few hours and it opening it up and giving everything that it has to give you, this is one of the funnest superhero, no, scratch that, one of the best video games I have played in a long time. The objectives around the city can start to pile on, and they can start to feel tedious and feel more like work than fun at some points, but unlocking so many awesome suits and powers, they're so worth doing. And even if you're not a fan of Spider-Man, the gameplay is worth the price of admission on its own. So also, this game is, well, how do I put it? Fucking gorgeous. From the moment you take your first swing in New York as Spider-Man, you see the city and how alive it is, and the reflections off the glass of the buildings, you know you're in store for something special. The character models are amazing. The attention to detail in the characters where they're talking and cutscenes among gameplay is just simply mind-blowing. I mean, even if you squint your eyes, it almost looks like you're watching a movie. From climbing around the city, you can see inside windows. This world has so many people moving around, and some glitches here and there which completely can be overlooked because of how astounding and amazing this game is. The world of Spider-Man just isn't populated with buildings with a few people walking around. This world is alive, and it feels alive. It feels like its own real place, and it's really impressive. There's so much attention to detail in this game, it is something you just have to experience. I could go on and on about how much I love the Spider-Man game, from just the aesthetics of the characters to how much love and lore of Spider-Man is put into this game, and how many quirks there are with the gadgets, and just how fun the gameplay is, and how amazing the story is, and the great plot twists that it have, to the fucking Avengers building inside of it. But this game, it has to be experienced. Honestly, Spider-Man is a game that is a must-buy at full price. This game is in the running for Game of the Year for sure, and rightfully so. And honestly, I can't wait to see what the next DLC has for this game, and what Insomniac chooses to do with this game next. Marvel's Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4 is absolutely an amazing game. I don't really know how else to put it to you. This game, from story to gameplay to all the lore and everything they've packed into this package, all I can say that this game is simply worth your time. Well, this is Kamikaze Soundwaves. I hope you enjoyed my review for Spider-Man. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Later.